Hey folks, welcome to the video. Today we're going to be diving into a fun project using the Qt framework to build our very own little chat app. First, let's take a quick look at what the final app will be like. As you can see, we can send messages here, and then anyone who's online can receive them in real time, and they can reply back. It's a bit like MSN Messenger if you were a kid in the early 2000s. There are actually two separate applications that we need to build. So there's the server app. This is responsible for handling the message delivery, and we're going to be building this using C++ and Qt. And then there's the Messenger GUI. This is the front end that the user interacts with. It's where the messages get displayed and sent, and it's actually what we're looking at on the screen just now. So this part is built using QML with a C++ model running underneath to handle the data. To make all this work, we'll be using TCP sockets to handle the actual communication between our client and server. TCP is great for instant messengers like this, and we're going to cover how to set up these connections, send and receive data, and just make sure that everything's running smoothly as we go through the tutorial. By the end of this video, you'll have a working chat system plus a solid understanding of Qt's networking features. Whether you're a Qt beginner or looking to expand your skills, this should be a great project for exploring real-time messaging. Alright, let's get started then. So we're going to start by building the server-side app, and Qt is actually going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us for this. So to start, we just need to open up Qt Creator and go to the Create Project button. We're going to choose to create a console application. We just need to tell it where to save our project. And select a folder, and then give the project a name. So I'm going to call it Chat Server. And next, and we'll use CMake as our build system. We won't worry about translations. And I'm going to use Microsoft Visual Studio libraries. It's up to you. You can use MinGW if you want. And we'll not bother with any version control for just now. Okay, so Qt is just setting up our project for us. Perfect. So the first thing we're going to do is just include some extra packages. So if we go to our CMake file, and then on our find package, we're going to add this network option. And then we're going to change the target link libraries so that it looks like this. And this will be network. Okay, and that should let us access all the libraries that we're going to need to build this app. So now we're going to add a C++ class to our project. So just right click on our source folder and say add new. And we'll go C++, C++ class. And we'll call the class chat server and have it inherit from QObject. Okay, next, finish. Okay, and then I'm just going to run CMake to make my new class appear. Yours may have appeared automatically. So let's go into our chat server header file. We'll add some extra includes at the top here. So we'll go hashtag include qtcp server, and we also need qtcp socket, and then I would also like qlist. Okay, our chat server is currently inheriting from QObject. We'd like this to actually inherit from qtcp server. Okay, so make that change here, and then we also need to make a change in our CPP file in the constructor. So rather than it being a QObject, we need this to be a qtcp server. So there, and let's just save all, and yet so that warning's gone away. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to tell our server to listen, and we're going to tell it to listen on host address any, and for the port number 1234. So this function here is a qtcp server function. So if I just put up the documentation, you can see here it is, and basically it's just telling our server to listen on a specific address and on a specific port for any traffic. So in our case, we've told it to listen on any host address for the port number 1234. The next thing we need to do is to tell our server what to do when some traffic actually comes onto that port. So to do that, we're going to be overriding a protected function. So if we go back to our header file and just type in the keyword protected, and then void incoming connection, and this takes a qint pointer with the socket description, descriptor, and we're going to be overriding this function. And again, if we just pull up the class descriptions, we can see that this is a virtual function that we are going to be overriding in our implementation. So we'll just add some definition in our chat server. And okay, so when this function gets triggered, that basically means that there's a new client that wants to connect to our socket, our server. So we're going to create a Qt TCP socket, and we're going to call it client, and that'll be a new if you're new to Qt, basically when you create pointers to Q objects, you can pass their parent in, which is what we're doing here, and that just handles some of the memory deletions when objects get deleted. So we've created our client. We're now going to go client set socket descriptor, and we'll pass in the socket descriptor that came into our function. Okay. So now we've got our client. I'm just going to create a few more custom functions in our chat server. So if you go back to the header file, we're going to create some private slots. And we'll have two. We'll have a handle client ready read, and we'll have a handle client disconnect. Okay, we don't actually need any signals for our project, so we'll get rid of that, and we'll add a private where we're going to have a QList of QTCP sockets, which is just going to be a list of all of the clients that are connected to our server. Okay, so if we go back to our incoming connections, I can go clients dot append, and we can add the client. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is connect some of the signals that are going to be generated by our QTCP socket, the client, to some of those slots that we just created. So we'll go connect client ampersand QTCP socket, and I want to connect to ready read, and I want to connect that signal to a signal in this class, and that's going to be handle client ready read. And then we're going to do another connection, which is again going to be from the client. Okay. Okay, I'm not sure why this is complaining, so let's just save everything and see if it goes away. No, maybe it's because we haven't defined these slots yet, so we can do that. Go back to our server header and just add some definitions. And save. Oh no, that's not fixed it. Oh, I've misspelled disconnected, so let's just put an S there and there, and hopefully that should fix everything. If we just go save all. Oh, and we've still got a problem. You should be disconnected, I think. You should be TCP socket and then disconnected. Right, okay, there we go. So now we just need to, basically, we've created our client object, and when the client emits this signal, ready read, we're going to call the function that we're defining here, which is handle client ready read. And then similarly, when the client tries to disconnect, we're going to call this handle client disconnected. Okay, so in a Qt slot, there's a cool function you can call called sender. And basically what this function does is it gets a pointer to the Q object that emitted the call. So that would be the client in this case. Okay, so we are going to use this function to get a pointer back to our client that made the call. So we're going to go qtcp socket, and we'll call this sender client. And then we're going to do a Q object cast. And we'll tell it it's a qtcp socket. And then we'll pass in the sender. And this should also be a pointer, and we'll just fix that typo. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check that the sender actually is a TCP socket. So basically say if this isn't valid, so if sender client isn't valid, then there's not really anything we can do here, so we're just going to return out of this function. Okay, so if we get to this point in our code, we know that our sender client is actually a TCP socket. So we're going to create a Q byte array, which we're going to call data, and we're going to get the sender client read all. Okay, and that's going to get the message that the client is trying to send. And because this is a tutorial, we're going to then add a debug here, and we're just going to say forwarding data, and then our data. Obviously, if this was a real project, you wouldn't have this debug statement, but it'll be useful for us just to see if anything goes wrong. We're then going to have, basically we need to take the data that we have here and send it on to all of the other clients that are connected. So we have a list of clients, which is our clients list here. So I'm just going to say for each qtcp socket client in clients. And the first thing we'll do is just check that the client that we're looking at here isn't the sender, because we don't want to send the sender its own data back. So we'll say if client does not equal sender client, or actually I think it's better to say if client equals sender client, then we'll just continue. Okay, so again, if we get to this point, we know that our client is not the sender client. So then we can say client write, and then we're going to write to the client the data. So basically we're just going to be sending this data on to all of the clients that aren't the sender client. Okay, so we're actually almost done now. We just need to handle the disconnecting. So we're going to just copy this part of the code into this one so that we can basically just get our sender again. And now, basically when a client disconnects, we just need to remove it from our clients list. So we'll go clients, remove all, and then sender client. And once we've removed it from our list, we just need to delete it. So we'll go sender client, and we'll call the delete later function. So that's it, that's the server class defined. The last thing we need to do is just go into our main function. And if we include this, what do we call it, chat server. And then in here, we just need to create our chat server. And that's us, that's the server application completely ready to go. Okay, so let's start working on the GUI. So we're going to go to new project. And this time we're going to choose a Qt Quick application. We're going to put it into the same folder that we were working before, and give it a project name. So I'm going to call mine Chat GUI, and that's fine. And for me, I'm also going to switch to using the Microsoft again, and finish. Okay, so Qt should have configured our project for us. We'll just run it very quickly to check that everything builds okay. And you should get a little window appearing, something similar to this. Okay, so that's all working. So our project is made up of two files at the moment. We have our main CPP file, and then we have our QML file, and then we also have our CMake file. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our CMake file, and we're going to add some extra packages in again. So we have Qt Quick. We're going to add to that Qt Core and Qt Network. And then similar to what we did before, we are going to add to this Core and Network. Okay, and that's our CMake file set up. We'll just run CMake to make sure we haven't broken anything. Okay, that seems fine. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new C++ class to our project. And this is going to be called message model. So actually we'll call this message model. We'll inherit from QObject, and that should be fine. So next, and then finish. Okay. So if we just run CMake to, so we can see our new file, I'm going to go into our message model header file, and we're going to add some includes. So it's going to include QString list model, and it's also going to include some QTCP socket. Okay, at the moment we're inheriting from QObject, we actually want to inherit from QString list model. So then we need to also just edit this to be QString list model. So this class is going to be what basically displays the list of messages that you're seeing in the screen. And QString list model is just an abstract item model that Qt has set up that you can kind of hook up to things like QML list views. Okay, so let's we're going to create a Q property here, and the property is going to be a QString. Its name is going to be called current message. Okay. And basically this is what our application is going to use to, so the QML stuff, when we type a message in, that's going to be stored inside this property. And then we can just ask it to generate our missing members. So now basically we've created our Q property, and we have a getter function and a setter function, and then a signal that's emitted when the message is changed. And Qt is actually written all of that for us. So you can see it has created this string which stores the current message. It's created our getter function and our setter function, and it's put those into our CPP file. The way we did that was just by right clicking on the property, and there's an option there to say generate missing properties. So we're going to also create a little Q invocable here. So we'll go Q invocable, and that's going to be void, and we're going to call this send message. Okay, and then we'll just add a definition for this. Invocable functions are just functions that the QML is going to be able to call. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say if the current message is empty, so they've not typed anything, then we don't want to do anything, so we're going to return. Otherwise, we are going to add the current message to our list of messages. So to do that, the string list model that we're inheriting from, it has a method called insert row, and we can then just ask it to insert a row, and it also has another one called row count. So basically this is just saying I want to insert a row at the very at the end of the list. Okay, so we've inserted a row. Now we need to actually just put some data in that row. So we're going to call another function called setData, and we need to get the index that we just created. So QString model is a Q abstract item model. That's what it inherits from, and that basically stores its data in a sort of table. So you have to give it a row and a column position. For stringless model, it's just a single column of data, and then each string is stored in a different row. So the index we want is going to be at the row of row count, and then at column 0. And then we want to pass it the message that was just given, so that'll be the current message. Okay, so now we've set the data. The last thing we want to do is probably clear the message. Actually, we don't need that because we'll do that in the QML side. So this is everything we need at this point. Okay, so that's got us a very early implementation of our message model. So we'll go back to our main CPP file, and what we want to do is we want to expose this message model to our QML class so that it can see it and interact with it. So to do that, I'm going to add a couple of includes. So we're going to go include it's QML and then context, QML context, and then we also want to include the class that we just created, so that's message model. Okay, then we want to go here and go QML register. Oh, can't type today. Register type. Okay, so QML register type. I want to pass in here our message model, and then we're going to call this a chat and give it a version number 10, and then our QML name is going to be message model. Okay, and now we should be able to create instances of this inside our QML files. So we'll test that out next. So let's open up our QML file here, and let's add an import for chat. So this is what we've literally just created, and then it was chat 1.0. Okay, and then we should be able to create an instance of our message model. Oops, sorry. Inside our QML. We'll also just do a few other little changes. So we're going to change our height and width so it's a bit more like a mobile app look. And we'll give it a title of chat app. Oh, it doesn't like this because IDs should always start with a lowercase letter. Okay. We'll now create the object that's used to kind of render all the messages. So that's going to be a list view. We're going to call this, give it an ID of message list. Give it some anchors. Sorry. So we'll give it a horizontal center of its parent horizontal center, and a top anchor to the parent top. For its width, we'll make it the parent width subtract 20, and then the height, we'll make the parent height subtract 50. At the moment, we're kind of just going to make quite an ugly looking application, just to kind of make sure everything's working properly, and then once we've got everything working, we'll make this QML a bit prettier. So if you're wondering why it's a bit rough and ready, that's why. So our model for this list view is going to be the message model that we created here. We'll set clip to true, which is just going to prevent any messages kind of going outside of this list view, so prevents any overspill. And then the last thing we'll do is just create a delegate. So this is what's actually used to render each individual item in our list. So for now, we're just going to use a text. And the text we will set to be the display. So this display is a property of our string list model. And then the width, we'll just make the parent width. Okay, so that's a really basic list view. And then the last core element that we need is a text field to enter the messages. So let's put in a text field. Oh. Okay, so we need to import a library. So if we go import qt quick control dot controls, then now it's happy. And we're going to give this an ID of message input. We'll give it some anchors. So it's going to have its horizontal center aligned with the parent horizontal center, which is the main window, and then its bottom is going to be aligned with the parent dot bottom. Okay, we'll just go width. It's going to be parent dot width subtract 20, and the height is going to be 40. We're going to set the text to be the message model dot current message, So if you remember, this is the Q property that we set up inside our C++ class. And then on text changed, we want to basically set the message. Message model dot current message is going to equal the text. Ooh. Okay. Oh no. Just playing silly buggers. Okay. The last thing we want to do is we want to put a keys on return pressed, and then we want to go and we want to send our message. So I'm going to add a little function inside our message model, which we can then call anytime we want to send messages. So we're going to call this function send, and it's going to do two things. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to call send message. So this is the Q invocable function that we wrote inside of our message model. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to clear the input. And by clearing the input, that will obviously then set our current message to be an empty string. Okay, so we want to go message model dot send. Okay, I think this should work well enough for a test, so let's do a little build. Okay, it's crashing, so let's see if we can figure out what's going wrong. I think the problem's somewhere in this QML. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just comment everything out and just try and run it again. That's working. So now let's just start reintroducing things. Oh, actually, I think I see what the problem is. Horizontal is spelt wrong. Is it? And I probably made the same mistake here. Okay, let's run this again. Okay, great. Now, if I just type something in here and push enter, okay. Okay, we don't seem to be able to see the messages, so let's see if we can figure out why that is. Okay, so I found the bug that was causing the fail. Basically, in our message model, when we're getting the index, it should be at row count -1, because obviously indexing starts from 0. So hopefully now it should work. Okay, so yeah, now it seems to be working properly. So at the moment, what we have is basically a QML list view, which is hooked up to our message model. So that's going to be the end of this part. In the next step, we're going to look at then connecting this so that we can also see messages that other people send, because at the moment we're just seeing the messages that are being typed by our one user. Okay, so now we're going to add our network connection so that our chat GUI can talk to our chat server. So I'm just going to go into the message model class, and I'm going to create a private slot. I'm going to call this slot on ready lead. Oh. Okay, and then in my private, I'm going to create a QTCP socket, and I'm just going to call that socket. Okay, now if we go back to our message model, in the constructor, I'm going to use the socket that we just created, and we're going to connect to host, and then we need to give it the host address that we want to use. So I'm using 127.0.0.1, and then the port number, which if you remember we set as 1234. Okay. We then want to also make a connection. So we want to connect our socket. And we want to connect a signal from that socket. So the signal should be ready read. I want to connect that to this and the function that we just created. So that was on ready read. Okay, now let's just actually flush out that function. So the process we're going to do here is actually very similar to what we did on our server-side program. So we're going to create a qbyte array, which we're going to call buffer, and that is going to equal the socket read all. Okay, we'll then just get this into a qstring, so qstring will be new message, and we'll construct that from our buffer. So now we just have to add this into our model, so we're going to go insert row, and that's going to be a row count. Then we're going to go set data, and that's the index, row count -1, comma 0, oops. And the value you want to set it to is new message. And it's probably a good idea to also just debug this out in case anything goes wrong. Okay, so that's going to work when someone else posts a message, but now we need to, when we send a message, we need to send that to the server. So here we need to go socket.send, socket.write, and then we want to write the current message, but we need to change this from a qstring to a qbuffer. So we'll just go to utf8. Okay, so that should work, and that should let us send messages back and forth. The only other thing I'm going to do is when I'm putting the data into my table, so using the set data function, I'm going to add a little keyword before the message, just so I know whether the message came from this application or whether it was sent from another one. So before any messages that I send, I'm going to add the keyword me, and then before any messages that anyone else has sent to us, I'm going to add the keyword OT. So this little extra bit will only be included in the data table for our QString list model. The reason we're doing it is just so that we can format messages depending on whether it was received by us or sent by us. And if we were flushing this out into a bigger project, instead of using the default versions of set data and data, we'd create our own custom string list model, and we'd have our own setter functions and getter functions. But as we want to keep things fairly simple, we're just going to use these little keys to signify whether it was sent by this app or by a separate app. Okay. Okay, so I think we're ready to test our app again. So this time we're going to need the server to be running. So if we just set our chat server app as the active project, and we'll launch that. And then we'll need to set our chat GUI as the active project, and we'll launch that as well. Okay, and now if we type a message into the GUI and press enter, let's see if our server is picking that message up. So we can see here in the application output that it is. We don't know at the moment if it's forwarding it on to any other apps, because we only have one application running at the moment. So basically what we need to do is create multiple instances of this chat app. So by default, Qt Creator will close this app if I try and push this run button again, but we can change that behavior in our preferences. So under preferences, there's build and run, and then build before deploying, stop application before building, we can set that to none and push apply. I'd recommend you switch this back once you've done this test, because it's quite useful that usually it rebuilds, it closes your application. Okay, and let's push play again, and now we should have a separate instance of our app, and if I say hi, you can see it's me, hi, and then this on this GUI we've said, oh, another user has said hi, so if I say hello, and it goes back. Okay, so that's actually all of the kind of networking stuff done. The only thing that we've got left to do is to make the QML a bit prettier. Like I said, I'd recommend that you switch this preference back to same project before you finish. So yeah, we'll have another little pause here, and then we'll get back to it to get the GUI looking a bit prettier. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is just make our QML look a bit prettier. Just stop your chat server if it's still running, on any of the other apps as well. Because we're really just wanting to format some messages, I'm just going to add some data to our message model, so that when it starts we can see some messages already in there, so we don't have to keep adding them to do the formatting. So we'll just go insert row, and we'll just add it row 0, and then we'll insert another row, we'll add it 0 as well, and then we're going to just set the data. So we're going to go set data for index 0, 0, and we'll just set this to we don't need that, and then this one so what we're doing here basically is we're just pre-filling our stringless model with a message from us and then a message from someone else. So let's run our app and just check that that data is going in okay. Sorry, small typo. One of these should be at 1. So if we run again, let's see what happens now. Okay, so you can see our chat app's started and we have some predefined messages, which is going to mean that we can see our formatting as we do it. Okay, so let's go into our QML file. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to edit this delegate here. Okay, so instead of using a text element like this, we're going to use a rectangle. And we'll actually just move this text element so it's inside our rectangle. Okay, and we'll give this an ID of the message text. Okay, and then for our delegate rectangle, we're going to set its height to be the message text. Oh, sorry, message text dot implicit height. So that will kind of get the approximate height to use from the size of the message that the text is showing. But then we'll add a little bit on just so that we have a bit more space. We're going to make the width equal to the parent width, and we'll make the color transparent. Okay, we're then going to create another rectangle. Okay, and this rectangle's height is going to be the same as its parents. Its width will be the parent width subtract 40, and then its color is going to depend on the display text. So if display dot starts with me, then we're going to use this color, and then if it doesn't start with me, we'll use this other color basically. The other thing we'll do is we'll add a radius of 10. So this rectangle is like our speech bubble, I suppose. So the last thing we want to do is we want to have it anchored to the right if it's a message from us, and to the left if it's a message from anyone else. So we're going to go anchors.right, and again we're just going to copy that. If display starts with me, then we're going to anchor to the parent right. Otherwise, we're going to set as undefined, and we're going to do pretty much the same thing for the left. So anchors left, but this time we'll say if it doesn't start with that, and we'll make this parent left. Okay. If you haven't seen these before, these are like ternary operators. So basically, when you have something followed by a question mark, it's if this is true, it'll be this. Otherwise, it'll be this. Okay. We want to put our text inside of our bubble, so I'm just going to cut this. We'll have this up here. The text we actually want to be the display, but we don't want to show the first 3 characters, because the first 3 characters are either me or OT. So we're just going to do a 3 there, and maybe to be explicit here, I'll put the colon in here. We'll add some anchors just to make it look good. So we'll say fill, parent, and margins. Oh, sorry. Margins of 10. Okay, and then finally we'll add a lap mode. and we'll say text lap. Not lap. Okay, so let's see how that looks now. Okay, so that's not worked. It's complaining about the, oh, okay, yeah. So this should be starts with instead of start. So if we close that and just make that say starts. And run again. Okay, and now it's looking much better. So the next thing we need to do is just sort out the layout a little bit. Okay. Okay, so we'll start by importing some layouts. So import qt quick, sorry, dot layouts. Okay, and instead of just what we're going to do here is going to have a column layout, and we'll just go anchors, fill, parent, and a spacing, of 8. Okay. Now we're going to take our two objects, so the list view and the text field, and we're just going to cut them and put them inside our layout. So the way layouts work, we don't really use the anchors or the sizes. We kind of use different tags. So for the list view, I want to say layout fill width, and we'll just set that to true, and then layout fill height, and we'll set that to true. So that basically means that the list widget is going to try and be as big as possible once everything else is shown. And then for the text field, we will get rid of these, and we'll set the layout fill width to be true, and then the layout preferred height, capital L, to be 40. Okay, and we'll just try that again. So that's looking pretty nice. Let's just add a bit more to our text field at the bottom. Okay, so at the bottom we're going to have our text field, but we're also going to have a button next to it. So we're actually going to create a row layout to do this. And we'll say layout fill width to be true, and layout height, or preferred height, sorry, to be 40. And we'll take our text field, put this in here. We'll maybe add some margins. The other thing we want to add is to our text field, we want some placeholder text, which maybe says type a message here. We'll maybe increase the font size a bit to 16. And then we want to add a button, so this is going to be a round button. And it's going to have the ID of send button. And it's going to have a preferred height 40. So that should be width. And then we'll have an on clicked. We want to go message model send. Okay, so let's see what our changes look like. Okay, and then we can just add some more messages to kind of see how that looks. I think generally that's looking okay. One thing that I want to add is, so here you can see basically we've gone off the bottom of the screen, but it hadn't scrolled to the bottom. So what I'm going to add is something that basically always scrolls to the bottom message. So if we go up to our list view, we're going to connect to on count changed, I think. And then when our count changes, we're going to make a call to Qt call later. And we'll just create a little callback function here. So hopefully that should do what we're after. Let's test it out. Okay, so now if we go off the bottom of the screen, it always scrolls to the latest message. Okay, very cool. So now we are just adding the very finishing touches. So the last things I'd quite like to do is maybe have a little bit of a margin at the top here, and then have an icon on our button here, and maybe have some button effects so it changes colour when we mouse on and those sort of things. So we'll add those last couple of changes now. Okay, so layout, top margin of 10, we're putting that on the list view, and then we just need to put some colours on the button. Okay, so for the button colour, we're just going to use some conditional formatting. So to set the background colour for the button, we need to use palette, button, and if the button's pressed, then I want to use this colour, which I've basically just copied from the internet. Otherwise, if the button is hovered on, so hovered, then I want to use a sort of medium green colour, or finally, if it's neither of those two cases, so if it's not being pressed and it's not hovered, then I want to use this default case. Okay, let's have a look at this now. So we've got our margin at the top. When I hover on the button, it changes colour, and when I press the button, it changes to a different colour. Okay, so that's all looking pretty good. I think the only thing we've got left to do is maybe to just put an icon on this send button. So somewhere that I like to use to get icons is a website called Flaticon, and you can search for different types of icons here. So the one that I like is this one. So I'm just going to download a copy of it, and we'll go for the free download. Okay, so I've taken that icon that I downloaded and I've put it in a folder called icons in my project folder. So now we're just going to add this to our project. So we'll just go add existing files, go into icons, grab this, open, and we'll just go on our CMake. Okay, so now I've got my icon as a resource in my project. I just need to add it as the button icon. So my computer was having a moment there because I hadn't stopped the chat GUI, so it was still open. So now I've closed that, it should hopefully behave a bit nicer. So yeah, we're going to set up this icon. So it's a Q resource, and it's a Qt QML, and then we put in our project name, which is chat GUI, and then icons, and then send.png. This seems to be a new way of doing it in Qt QML. I think it's very cool. The only thing I don't like about it is I don't seem to be able to copy that path anymore, whereas you used to in the old versions of Qt, you'd just be able to copy it. So I really like the new format, but hopefully they update the GUI. Anyway, let's see how that looks now. Okay, great. I think that's us done now. The last thing we need to do is just remove these preloaded messages that we put in. So if we go back to our message model and just get rid of this, and we can test it all out together. So we'll have to go into our preferences again and just change this build setting back to none, apply, and OK. So we'll need to start our chat server first, so let's go here, let's get that running. Okay, now let's switch to our GUI and let's get this running. And we're going to need 2 instances of this, so let's get another one. There we go, and let's try it out. Hello. So yeah, that's us done. I hope you guys have enjoyed the project and had some fun. All the best. And hopefully try and do some more projects in the near future.